The President, please be seated. The court is now in session. Before we proceed to the co-prosecutors, the Chamber notes that accused person Ieng Sari is not present in the courtroom. Ms. Zisai, could you report on the status of Mr. Ieng Sari? Saikolbuti. Mr. President, Your Honors, Mr. Ieng Sari is in his holding cell. He has waived his right to be present in the courtroom, and the waiver has already been offered to or submitted to the Chamber. The President, thank you. The Chamber has received Ieng Sari's waiver signed on the 31st of May 2012. He has asked that he be excused from this courtroom and be permitted to observe the proceeding from his holding cell for the rest of the day. He said he has some health concern that he cannot remain seated in the courtroom. The Chamber therefore grants such request. Mr. Ieng Sari is allowed to observe the proceedings from his holding cell through the audiovisual means. Mr. Ieng Sari is allowed indeed to observe the proceedings through remote participation. AV booth officers are now instructed to ensure that the AV or audio-visual equipments are well connected to the holding cell so that Mr. Ieng Sari can observe the proceedings from there. Mr. Co-Counsel for the civil parties, you may now proceed. Counsel Pek Ang. Thank you, Mr. President. Your Honors, I am on my feet just to inform the Chamber that Counsel Sin Suvon and Mr. Barnabe Nikwe will be putting questions to the witness when the floor is handed to the civil party counsels. The President, thank you, Counsel. We note your position, and we would like now to proceed to the prosecutors to put questions to the witness. You may now proceed. Mr. Wayne Hort. Good morning, Mr. President, Your Honors. Good morning, my learned colleagues. Mr. Witness, and people in the public gallery. Yesterday, before we broke, I put some questions to Mr. Lamut already, but I have a few more questions to put to you today. Before I proceed with my question, I would like to refresh your memory concerning the question I put yesterday, and I may seek your clarification on this. During the democratic Cambodia, was it the case that wounded soldiers were made to get married with some women, and you said you have no knowledge of that? Do you still maintain your position? Response: yes, I do. I have no knowledge of this. Question: I would like now to ask you a question concerning the religious belief during the democratic Cambodia. Have you ever heard the term reactionary? Response: yes, I have. Question: have you ever heard the expression reactionary religion? Response: I have never been told or talked to about this expression. Question: during the democratic Cambodia, did you ever see any monks in a pagoda? Response: in my cooperative there was a pagoda, but I saw no monks. Question: could you tell the court were monks treated as the reactionary religion followers? Response: nobody talked to me like that. Question: were you ever told about the Christianity and Islam? Were they regarded as the reactionary religions? Have you ever heard or told about this? Response: I cannot explain this to you because I have never been told about this to me. Question: thank you. I would like now to proceed to the common plan before the 17th of April 1975. Mr. Lamut, yesterday you testified that you joined the revolution movement and you helped the movement economically, emotionally, and physically. My question is, did you attend the meetings very often with those leaders? Response: no, I didn't. Question. You stated that you did not attend the meetings, but did you happen to know the plan to attack Phnom Penh? Response. I have no idea about this plan. Question. Are you aware of the methods applied by the CPK to evacuate people from Phnom Penh? Response. I don't know. Question. On the 17th of April 1975, when this date, during this date, could you tell us where were you? Response. I was at home in Phnom Penh on that day. Question. Could you tell us what Phnom Penh was like on that date? Response. I was at home, so I could only tell you about what happened near my home. I saw some Khmer Rouge combatants coming in the vicinity, but I have no idea what happened in other sections or districts in the city. I could only tell you what I saw near my home. Question. When you saw the combatants, the young people coming near your home, were you referring to the soldiers or civilians? Response. Indeed, I was referring to the soldiers because they were armed. Question. Did any of the Khmer Rouge soldiers talk to you? Anything? Response. When they came in, they didn't say anything to me. They would just walk near my home. Question. Were you told by them to leave Phnom Penh? Response. Late in the afternoon, we were told to leave the city. We were told that we would be leaving the city for a few days only. Question. So, you indicated that the Khmer Rouge asked you to leave the city only for a few days. My next question is about the property. So, how did the Khmer Rouge tell people about their assets or property? What would they do with them? Response. We were not told anything other than being asked to prepare some food. That's all. Question. When you were leaving Phnom Penh, what was your impression concerning the people condition on the roads? Response. I saw people walking on the roads, and there were a lot of people on the roads. I don't know where they would be going. Question. When you left Phnom Penh, where were your next stop? Response. I stopped at some relatives in a village in Kien Swai, which is adjacent to National Road number 1, and I stayed with them. Question. Did you witness, or could you tell us the condition of the people, the evacuees, the old people and children? Response. People had to leave Phnom Penh in family. It was no strange, and everyone had to go all together with the whole family, and road was crowded with people, and people could move and gather at Kien Swai location, and there were a lot of people there. Question. In such a chaotic situation, did Angka take effort to provide any medical services for them, for the people? Response. I did not see anything like that. Question. How long did you have to stay in Kien Swai, and what did you do there? Response. There was a cooperative in that location, and because I had some relatives there, I asked that I be allowed to settle at this cooperative. However, later on, I was transferred to another new cooperative. Question. At the first cooperative, could you tell the court your impression concerning the food ration? Response. Each family had to do their best to find their own food to feed their own family. There was no proper arrangement for people to have proper food in the cooperative. Question. Now, with regard to the second cooperative, you said you were transferred to. Could you tell the court the condition of, or the food condition at that cooperative? Response. There was no food shortage in the second cooperative, although food was not plentiful, but there was no shortage of food. Question. Were you asked to put your property as a common property? Response. I was told so, but I did not live with any belongings or property. I had only a watch. That's all. Question. I have noted that for the rest of your life you had been doing your best to acquire your assets. So when you left Phnom Penh, you left with nothing. Is that correct? Response. Yes, it is. Question. Did you know what happened to your property? Did you know that Angkar seized your property? Response. After I left Phnom Penh, I had to leave my house behind. I had no knowledge whether the house was seized or not. We, when leaving Phnom Penh, had a car where our members of family could have a ride. But then at Kinswai we had to really give it to other people. Question. At each cooperative were your biographies taken? Response. At the first cooperative, no biography was ever taken or given because it was still not properly managed. The cooperative was not yet properly managed. But when I moved to the second cooperative, my biography was taken. Question. Are you aware where your biography could have been sent to? Response. No, I'm not. Thank you. Question. In each cooperative of the CPK, your cooperatives, the cooperatives you stayed in particular, did you know that people would be classified into 17th of April people, the old people and the new people? Response. At the first cooperative, there was no such classification. People could stay where they wished to stay. Question: what about at the second cooperative? Response: at the second cooperative, there were mainly intellectuals who left Phnom Penh. There were also some workers in Phnom Penh, along with some local peasants evacuating from the south part of Phnom Penh, from all the way from Cheung Aek to stay at that cooperative. So I can say that at the second cooperative there were intellectuals, workers and peasants. Although there was a diversity of people staying at the cooperative, they were equally treated and they had to do farming equally. Question: were you married at that time? Response: yes, I was. Question: in the cooperatives, were you reunited with your family members and spouse? Response: our family members lived together except one of my children who was abroad. Question: when were you transferred to Phnom Penh? Response: I don't remember the exact date, but I'm sure that at the cooperative I worked to do farming for a season, and after we collecting the harvest and stacking the haystack, then I was asked to move to Phnom Penh by Angkar. I think it was about 1976 or so. Question: do you remember who were transferred to Phnom Penh with you at that time? Response: I came to Phnom Penh alone. Question: were you told the reason why you had to return to Phnom Penh? Response: I was not told the reason behind this. Question: when you entered Phnom Penh again, what was your impression of the city? What was Phnom Penh like? Response: Phnom Penh was very quiet. Question: I may go back a little bit. You said you returned to Phnom Penh alone. What about your family members, including your children and spouse? Were they coming with you? Response: no, they weren't. They stayed at the cooperative.
Question: when could you reunite again with your family? Response: once in every 2 or 3 weeks, I was allowed to visit my family for a night or 2, and then I had to return. Question: When they gave you permission, did they issue you a permit, a travel permit? Response: I cannot recall, but to my knowledge, I was not given any such authorization or permit. Question: who was in charge of permitting you to visit your family without any such travel permit? Someone who was in charge in Phnom Penh allowed me to do so, and then I cycle into Phnom Penh or to other places, and then when I got to any one checkpoint, then I would tell them that I had to go to this place and that place, and they allowed me. That was it, and they did not even bother to ask me for such permit. Questions: who was the person in charge? He was Dun. Dun was the chairman of the Commerce Committee at that time. Prosecutor: so I would like to now move closer to the event that took place in Ministry of Commerce. So my question is, where did you stay when you first returned to Phnom Penh? Response: when I first arrived in Phnom Penh, I stay in a house close to the industry committee, and the house in which I stay was close to the industry committee compound. It was not called the Ministry of Industry at that time, it was called Industry Committee. Question: who did you meet when you first arrived in that house? Response: at that time, I stayed close to the industry committee. Then I met the chairman of the industry committee, who told me that I should stay there on temporarily. Question: who was the chairman of the industry committee? He was on. Questions: do you know his full name? Response: no, I don't. I only knew him as On, and people call him Comrade On. Question: what was your main duties at the time? Response: there was no clear designation. As for my roles, they asked me to simply wait. Question. Was there any meeting to introduce you to the team? Respond, no, there was no such meeting. Question. Did you ever meet foreign delegates on their official visit? Respond, yes, I did. Question. What was the purpose of the foreign visitors' visit? Response. Basically, they came to talk about trade between Cambodia and Cambodian counterparts. Question. So which country were those delegations from? Response. The delegation was from China. The People's Republic of China. Question. At the time, was the Foreign Commerce Bank established? Respond, no, that Foreign Commerce Bank was not yet established. Question. Since such bank was not established, how did they go about establishing trade relations? Response. At first, they simply told us the fundamentals of trade between the two countries. And they said that bank was instrumental to the process, but bank was not yet established. So in the Cambodian side, not many of us understood banking transaction, and I was the only one who used to work in the bank. I was not so much skillful in the banking system. However, I knew the system, how it worked, so they asked me to facilitate. Question. So in which year was the said bank established, and who was then in charge of that bank? Response. I cannot recall it well. I do not remember the exact date, but it was sometime in 1976, in late 1976 or so, but I cannot recall the exact date. But when it was first established, it was named Foreign Trade Bank of Cambodia. And the chairman of that bank at that time, let me go back a little bit. According to the letter of establishing this bank, there were two individuals in charge of this bank, one being the Director General and the other was the Deputy Director General. But I cannot recall their names, but I can remember his surname, May, but I cannot recall his full name. and the other one was the Deputy Director General. And again, I would like to state that I did not even meet in person with the Director General of the bank at that time. Question. Concerning the organizational structure of the bank that was due to establish, I would like to ask you, what institution was this bank required to report to? Response. I am not sure. I did not know which institution supervised this bank. As a matter of conventional practice in the bank, there was a system of work reports. Who did you report to? Response. I had to be more detailed about that. The bank was managed by one director and one deputy director, but again, I never met them in person. But as for the other departments, there were no other section, for example, accounting section or finance sections or so. So in terms of reporting systems, there was no established mechanism or procedures to submit report because there were no many people. As I said, I never even met the Director General myself. So, and this bank was mere empty institution, and only when there were foreign delegates, then we would meet with them. Otherwise, no operation was taking place. And if we had to prepare reports, then such report had to be sent through a messenger, and the messenger would convey this report to the upper echelon, but I have no idea who upper echelon was, and I dare not ask the messenger as to whom this letter was supposed, or this report was supposed to be sent. Question. So, are you saying that the messenger was tasked to communicate between you and the upper echelon? Is that correct? Response. The messenger was about 13 or 15 years of age. They did not know anything. They did not understand anything at all. Whatever they got from us, they simply took it and passed it on to others. And again, I did not recruit the messenger myself. The messenger was designated by the upper authority. Question. Yeah, you said that the messenger were about 13 or 15 years of age. But in your report, did you address it to any individuals? For example, if you had to address it to brother this and that, or at this level and that level? Response. Mostly what I sent to the upper authority, it was in the form of a draft. I had to draft it in English, and I had to admit that my English was not good enough. I was not clear. Certain terms I was not familiar with. I put it in a bracket using French term because I knew that people at the upper level understood English very well, so they would revise it accordingly. So at that time we sent to the office, and I did not know whom I addressed to, but I only addressed to the office, but I cannot even recall the number of the office. And there was a central communication office up there who was responsible for sending those report to. And again, I cannot recall the number of the office because it has been 30 years over. But I simply told the messenger every time he came to my office that this was the report I was supposed to send to office. But I did not make mention the person whom this letter was addressed to. Question. Earlier on this morning you mentioned that Duen was the chairman of the Commerce Committee. Did you know who the immediate superior of Duen? Respond, no, I don't know. Question. Between you and Duen, who is the superior? In terms of hierarchical structure, Duen was more superior than me. As you know, the bank was subordinate to the committee, so we simply explained technical matters to him. Question. Concerning the structure of the ministry per se, did you know who the chairman of the ministry? Response. I would like to be clear. We use the term ministry. Now we have Ministry of Industry, Ministry of Commerce. But back then they did not use the word ministry per se because they use committee instead, says Commerce Committee or Industry Committee. And in the Commerce Industry, there was a chairman of the Commerce Committee. And when I first arrived in Phnom Penh, Duen was the chairman of the Commerce Committee. And then later on, I again cannot recall the exact date. Duen was removed or dismissed, I don't know, but he was removed, and then Van Rut took his place. Van Rut was a former member of the Commerce Committee. But since Duen disappeared, then Van Rut came to take his place. Question. When Duen was removed and disappeared mysteriously, then Van Rut came to take his position. Did Van Rut inspect rice production in each region? Response, that I do not know. Question. Had you ever received reports on rice production sent from the regions? Respond, no, I never received one. Question. In your capacity as a deputy director of the bank, did you forge any relationship with overseas banks? Response. At the time, despite of the fact that I was the Deputy Director General, but I never signed off any documents, because the documents I prepared, I had to submit it to the Director General, whom I never met in person, and no archive copy was given to me for record, because the people at the upper level would revise it and send it out. And I believe, however, that reports or a communication letter or so must have been communicated between our bank and banks overseas. Question. So are you saying that there were such documents, but you cannot recall what documents was all about? Is that correct? Response. The document might have been endorsed by the Director General, but then the document was not sent back to me. I never had a copy myself. So it was my pure assumption that the reports or the document was sent away, but I did not have a copy myself. Question. Did you know Vern Wade? Response. Yes, I did. What position did Vern Wade hold? Response. According to the organizational structure of the Democratic Cambodia at that time, I did not know it for sure because there was no official announcement whatsoever. But through my observation, I noted that Vern Wade was in charge of economy. And when I returned from the cooperative, he asked me to meet. He called me Bong Bong, or brother, because I was older than him. And he told me that there were Chinese delegates who were to visit Cambodia, and he needed people who understood the bank transaction. So he asked me to be there in order to facilitate the meetings with the Chinese delegates. question. We learned that Von Wade was in charge of economy, but my question is, do you know the organizational structure of the economy committee? Response: No, I don't know. Question: Can you tell the court the revolutionary name of Ham? Did you ever hear this name? Response: Yes, I did. Question: Do you know his full name now? Response: His full name now is Khieu Sampon. Actually, I knew it long time ago. Question: Did you know the position of Khieu Sampon, who used the revolutionary name Ham at that time? Response: No, I did not know.
The relevant facts and evidence, my colleague Mr. Tariq Abdul Haq will proceed with those questions. On behalf of the prosecution, I would like to thank you, Mr. Witness, very much for your time responding to our questions during the session, and I hope you will be pleased to respond to questions my colleague will be putting to you as well. And thank you, Mr. President and Your Honors, for the opportunity to put questions. And that's all. Mr. President, Co-Prosecutor, you may now proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, Your Honours, good morning, Counsel, and good morning, Mr. Sakyam Lamut. What I would like to do is briefly return to some of the topics that you discussed with my colleague, and then we will move on to other areas. I want to thank you for being here. I know we're asking you about matters which took place a long time ago, and we do appreciate your assistance. You said yesterday that you had joined the revolutionary cause. Sometime early in your life. Are you able to be a little bit more specific for us? Was that in the 1950s or 1960s, or was it later than that?
Response. So far as I remember, it could have been in the 1950s or 60s, I think in those years. I wish to also add that at that time there was no proper arrangement of the Communist Party of Cambodia as such.
And I think you said to my colleague that in this period you had already met Mr. Van Rith. Is that correct?
Response. I met a few people, but I don't remember meeting any particular person because I cannot recall.
But do you recall knowing Van Rith before 1975?
Response. Yes, I do.
Did he participate in any of the meetings that you described for us yesterday and today, at which revolutionary causes were discussed?
Response. In meetings, I sometimes met with different people, and they were common meetings, and I don't remember seeing Van Rith in the meetings because the meetings were attended by several other people that it's difficult for me to recollect them all.
You said to us yesterday that at one stage Van Rith was forced to escape, if I recall correctly, because Lon Nol's people were after him. Were any of the other people that you were meeting with that were members of the movement, were any of them forced to escape in that period?
Response. No, I don't know about this.
So is it correct to say that apart from Van Rith escaping, the meetings continued with the other participants and yourself?
The response, yes it is. But I wish to also emphasize that Van Rith did not leave the country. He only had to move to another area still under Khmer Rouge control.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. Were you able to have any contact with him after he fled Phnom Penh?
Response, no.
Focusing in on the 1960 period, early to mid-1960s, were you then familiar with Mr. Khieu Samphan?
Response, yes I was.
What positions did he hold? What did he...
The President, Co-Prosecutor, please hold on. Counsel for Mr. Ian Sari, you may now proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honors. and good morning to everyone in and around the courtroom, and my apologies to the prosecutor for objecting at this point. But the line of questioning in the period that we're discussing, the 1960s, people having to escape, does raise a particular concern in that now we're going into this area where obviously it is somewhat outside the temporal jurisdiction, but for contextual purposes is proper. But it really does call into question the King Fathers, who back then was the head of state, his conduct, which is a rather very dark period of the Cambodian history. And of course, on numerous occasions we have argued that the King Father and others must come and give evidence. So if we're going to go into this area, then obviously witnesses from that period, including the King Father, may need to be called to give evidence in 002/1. And I raise this issue because, and I'm not suggesting that he should come, but if we're going to be going into great detail about why people had to escape, and we're going to go into the context, then obviously...
The President Counsel, could you please hold on, and co-prosecutor, you may now proceed with your line of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. President. So just returning to my question, Mr. Sakim Lamut, you said to us you were familiar with Khieu Sampong. What positions, if any, did he hold in this period?
Response. I'm not sure. I know what his roles in the revolution could have been, but I believe that during the King's father's regime, he was a parliamentarian. So again, in the revolution, I don't know what he did.
Did you meet with him in this period, early to mid-60s, and how often?
Response. I had nothing to meet with him because when he was still in the country and not yet in the liberated zone, accidentally we met, but I had never had any meetings in which he attended.
Thank you. You said to us you were not sure what role he played in the revolutionary movement at that time. But as far as you knew, was he involved with the revolutionary movement in that period, early to mid-60s?
Response. I cannot speculate because I'm not sure on this.
Did you know Mr. Ying Siri at this time?
Response. Yes, I did.
And was he involved in the work of the revolutionary movement? And did you see him in this period?
Response. No, I don't know.
And just to finish very quickly on this, in this period, did you know Mr. Nuon Chea?
Response: No, I didn't.
Thank you. You said to my colleague yesterday that you provided some assistance to the movement in that period. Could you describe for us exactly what assistance you were providing?
Response: There was nothing other than some small financial contribution. I don't remember the money I provided to the movement because I worked as an official and I earned a little, so I just took a part of the income to assist the movement, and that's all.
And how did you provide that money? Who did you give it to?
Response: During meetings, the lower level meetings, the contribution could be offered to the chairpersons of the meetings, and I just had no idea how my money could have ended up in any place, and I just wish to offer something.
Did you provide any other form of assistance, given your experience as a banker, as someone working in a loan unit in a bank?
Response: No, I didn't provide any other form of assistance.
We're going to finish this topic very quickly, Mr. Sakim Lamut. I just want to, for the sake of clarity, show you a reference to your name in a document, and perhaps you can say to us if it is an accurate description or not. Mr. President, I'd like to show the witness a page from E3/9. This is the Philip Short book. There is a very brief passage makes reference to the witness, and with your permission, I'd like to simply read that, show him the page and read the sentence to him, and see if he can assist us with clarifying the facts.
The President, you may proceed, but before that you should also advise the Chamber and the parties to the proceeding on the page ERN numbers and reference pages for the record.
Thank you, Mr. President. The ERNs for this document, unfortunately, at the moment is only available in English and French. Requests have been made for some of this material to be translated, but it's a very large book. The English ERN is 00396-469, and in French it is 00639-792. The passage is very brief, and I propose to read it, and perhaps the interpreters can translate for us. So if we could have that on the screen with your permission, Mr. President.
The President, you may proceed.
Thank you. Mr. Lamut, are you able to read the text on the screen, or would you like a hard copy?
Response. It is not true, and I would not accept this.
That's fine, Mr. Sakim Lamut. I'm just going to read that out for the record. The passage states, the banker Sakim Lamut served as the movement's occult treasurer, and this page is discussing the 1974 period. And I think we have your response on that, and we can move on, unless you have further comment.
Response. I think this statement is purely a speculation or a guesswork of the author of the book. During the period, I had contributed nothing other than small amount of money, so I can conclude that this assertion is just the unfounded or baseless argument by the author of the book.
Thank you very much. Now, I might fast forward to the 17th of April 1975, and just by way of follow-up, see if you can assist us with a few specifics. You said to us that you were told to leave Phnom Penh in the afternoon of that day, and you were told that you would be able to return within a few days. Did you leave with your family at this point?
Response. Yes, we had to leave Phnom Penh altogether in the whole family.
And what about your neighbours and others living around you? Did they also have to leave, or did any of them stay in Phnom Penh?
Response. I believe none remained because everyone had to leave. However, after leaving the vicinity, I couldn't tell whether my neighbors could be living as well. It's just my belief.
Now, I think you said you moved out of Phnom Penh on National Road 1, which, if I'm not mistaken, would be the Monivong Boulevard, and then continuing from there. Could you describe for the chamber what you were seeing at this time?
The President witness, could you hold on? And counsel for Mr. Ieng Sary is on his feet. He may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. My apologies for interrupting, but again, we've covered this area already, and here lies the problem. If we're going to have a national lawyer or prosecutor, whichever side, get up first to cover some areas, sort of like a smorgasbord, and then to have the second lawyer get up, or prosecutor, to then go back to these issues, we are duplicating the work, and it's time-consuming. This area was asked and answered. Now, if it wasn't fully covered,
The President, Council, could you please be brief concerning your ground for the floor you have? Because time is precious in this, and we observe that every time you make comment, you take long period of time to do so. So time and again, the chamber would like to hear from you whether you are now objecting the line of questioning, for example, whether the questions are leading or hypothetical or of any nature that are not allowed by the law. Be more precise and brief, then the chamber will have the basis for our ruling to your objection. So please be more specific on this. Do you think that the question is repetitive or else?
It's not only repetitive, but it's the practice that this trial chamber has adopted to allow repetition ad nauseum. And that's the purpose why I object, and that's why I give context to my objection. And in light of Your Honor's way I was previously treated, in simply not even giving me a ruling, but rather asking the prosecutor to move on, it is incumbent upon me to make a thorough and accurate record for the purposes of an appeal, if necessary. That's why I take longer than necessary, perhaps.
Mr. President, if I may be heard.
The President, Mr. Co-Prosecutor, would you wish to respond to the remarks made by counsel for Mr. Ingsari? Parties indeed are vested with the full rights to appeal any decision by the trial chamber, and you can make use of all the procedures before this chamber if you would like to proceed so. Your rights have never been deprived of concerning this.
Thank you, Mr. President. Obviously, we strongly disagree with my learned friend. All I am doing is briefly following up in relation to my colleague's examination. My colleague spent 45 minutes yesterday covering the pre-75 period. I just spent 10. I don't propose to spend more than 10 to 15 minutes on the evacuation of Phnom Penh. And for the record, all the witness said was that he saw people walking and that there were a lot of them. I think for the benefit of the chamber and all the other parties, it's appropriate to ask a few follow-up questions, see if the witness can paint the picture for us in a bit more detail. And if counsel keeps objecting, then we will lose the flow of this testimony and we'll just waste time. I don't think the objection is well-founded at all.
The President. The Chamber will rule on the objection by the Defense Counsel for Ingsari. This objection is not sustained. The prosecution may continue to put a question to the witness concerning the fact you just mentioned, but once again, the Chamber wishes to remind the prosecution that this fact was actually asked by the national prosecutor. But if you have other questions which you would like to elicit answer from the witness in detail, you may put the question more briefly. And in addition, parties should, if prosecution or parties devise the section concerning the alleged facts in the closing order, then they should be organized in preparing the sections they were responsible for cross-examine with the witness so that you will make good use of the court time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Returning then to this topic, Mr. Sakimlamut, briefly, you said to my colleague that you saw a lot of people walking. During this march, did you see any Khmer Rouge soldiers, such as the one that you saw earlier in the day near your house?
Response. When people were leaving the city, they brought along with them their respective means. For example, if they had trucks or vehicles or motorbike, they would bring them along. But I also noticed that there were soldiers or people escorting those people along the street. And as for other events, I cannot really answer it unless you are more specific on your question as to what situation you are asking about. But that was the overall picture of the situation of evacuating people from the city at that time.
Thank you. As far as you knew and from what you observed, did everyone have to leave, or could people ask to stay?
Response. That I do not know.
Did you see anyone refuse or ask if they could be exempt from the evacuation?
Response. That I did not know either, because when they asked me to leave, I had to leave at that time. As for those who resisted the order to leave the city, I did not know.
Thank you. Now, moving on to Kien Svai, which I think you said to us was your first location. How far from Phnom Penh was this place, and how long did it take you to reach it?
It's about 20 kilometers away from Phnom Penh. And then when I got to one pagoda by the name of Champa in Champa village. It was a little bit further than Prek Ain village. It was about 10 kilometers plus, but it was not about 20 kilometers, I guess. But when we left Phnom Penh, we reached that destination the next day, the early morning the next day, because actually at that time it was so crowded on the street we could not move fast.
And when you reach Kem Svay, you said to us yesterday that you asked to be allowed to settle there, because I think you said you had some family there. Who did you ask for permission?
Response. On that first day, there was no exact structure of assignment or appointment in the cooperative. So I asked people there, and there was no, actually the chief of cooperative assigned to monitor that cooperative. So at that time, people who wanted to stay in certain place, they could stay there. Those who had to go to other places, they might leave at that time. So there was nothing clear at that time. So I met my siblings, my relatives there, so I decided to stay there temporarily.
So then, is your earlier testimony a little bit incorrect? You didn't ask anyone to be allowed to stay there. You simply decided to stay there by yourself.
Response. That is correct. I stayed there temporarily, because I did not intend to stay there for long, because I wanted to leave for my hometown. But since I met my relatives over there, I decided to stay there with them. And then my relatives also agreed to accommodate me.
You were born in Kampot, is that correct? Just have to wait for the microphone.
Yes, I was born in Kampot province, in Chuk district.
You just said you wanted to go to Kampot. Why did you not go to Kampot?
Response. Because when I left my home, I was gathered somewhere in Chba Ampu. I actually intended to go to Takmau, but since it was so crowded and packed with people at that time, so they pushed us, and then we had to walk, and we could not turn back because the road was blocked and it was so crowded. So I had to cross the bridge over there, and eventually I got to Chba Ampu.
Thank you. You said to my colleague, I believe this morning, that you were transferred to a second cooperative after some time. Could you tell us who it was that transferred you there?
Response. I did not know.
Well, did anyone tell you that you had to move, or how did it happen that you moved to another cooperative?
Response. There was a friend of mine was in Phnom Penh. I did not know his position at that time, but he came to tell me that I had to be prepared to leave the cooperative and return to Phnom Penh. That was all he told me.
I just want to, I think you're one step ahead of me, perhaps. I was referring to your relocation from Kien Svai to a cooperative in the south of Phnom Penh. That particular relocation, do you recall who told you to go to another cooperative?
The President. The witness need not answer this question because it was once asked by the national prosecutor. The question is repetitive.
Thank you. You said to us also that at the second cooperative, you were asked to write a biography, and you didn't know who it was sent to. But did you know what the purpose was of you writing a biography?
Response. When I got there, everyone had to do it, whether they be intellectuals or peasants. Everyone had to do the job. The farmers or peasants did not know how to read and write, but then they asked me to have them write it down, and I did not know where the chief of cooperative would take it to, but we all had to do it.
And were you told what you needed to write in this biography, or did you simply write it as you thought appropriate?
Response. They told us to write that biography.
And I do appreciate we're discussing events that took place a long time ago. But if you're able to recall for us, what were the things that you had to write?
Response. We had to start from our personal details, our names, our birthplace, our education level, and our work as well. So these are some of the details. For example, before we left for the cooperative where we worked. The President. The time is now appropriate for adjournment. We will resume at 11:05. Court officer, please facilitate the witness and his duty counsel to relax and refresh himself and bring them back to the court before we resume. Thank you.